Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Seasonal Tokens Podcast, where Polar interviews people so you can do more investing and less gambling.
Hello everyone, it is Polar here, the CMO of the Seasonal Tokens. Welcome on another episode of the Seasonal Tokens Podcast. And today we have another special guest. We have Brian DeMint, the author of the book Bitcoin Evangelism and a long-time crypto investor. So welcome, Brian.
Hi, thanks for having me. I appreciate you guys having me on and getting to join. And yeah, I love talking Bitcoin, crypto, and everything. So thanks for just making my night.
Yeah, thank you very much for jumping in the late night for you. As far as I know, it's after midnight for you. So thank you very much for giving us time to be here.
Yeah. Well, hey, you know what? If somebody wants to talk about this stuff at midnight, I'm down. It's usually my friends and I, my wife's used to when they come over, if we're talking Bitcoin and crypto, it's going to be a late night anyway. So she's already gone to bed and she gave me permission to come on and talk to you. So we're good.
Okay, amazing. So when she wakes up, tell her that I'm really grateful for this permission.
I will.
Okay, so Brian, can you introduce yourself with a few words, even though I know that it will be much more than a few words?
Pretty much everything I say is always more than a few words. So we need a code word for when I'm going too long. But yeah, as short as I can make something. I've been in the Bitcoin crypto space. I first heard about Bitcoin in 2012. I thought it was ridiculous. I said kind of what everybody else says when they first hear about Bitcoin. And they said, oh, it's a Ponzi scheme. It's a pyramid scheme. You know, I didn't even probably know what those things were at the time, but those are just the common accusations. And I just, dismissed it. Came back to it about a year later in 2013 when I had a few friends that were serious about it. Just say, hey, you need to take a new look at this. And so started to study it a bit more. Finally, by 2014, I bought my first Bitcoin. And yeah, by that point, I had done enough study of economics, monetary. That's just what happens. That's the common. I feel like everybody that is into Bitcoin or crypto, at some point, they dismissed it. They came back to it later. They studied economics. They learned about how our financial systems and our banking systems are broken and messed up. And they inevitably learned that Bitcoin is a sound form of money. And therefore, we adopt it. So that was kind of my, how I came to Bitcoin. The one thing that really was the thing that I heard that just set off the light bulb, though, I was listening to the Joe Rogan podcast and he had on Andreas Antonopoulos. And this is probably 2013, maybe early 2014. And he said a bunch of things that were great. But the one thing he said that really made sense and clicked for me, he said, in the history of computer science up until 2009, when Satoshi Nakamoto created Bitcoin, he said, we never had a way in computer science to make sure that digital things were scarce. That was what really was so revolutionary. Is one of the things that was so revolutionary about Bitcoin was that before that, we saw the problems with digital things losing value, or it was hard for digital things to maintain value. Because if you go, for example, into a text document and you type up the word money, you can just copy and paste the word money as many times as you want. That word can't have value because you can just create it infinitely. That kind of sounds silly. But then when you apply it to something like music, in the early 2000s, when music became very digital. It was digital a little bit before that, but it was mainstream digital with services like Napster and LimeWire. There was all sorts of music sharing websites that came out. And so as soon as music files went to MP3s and you could just download them or email them to a friend, the music industry lost a ton of money because they couldn't keep a cap on their music. It used to be you could only have, if you had a physical CD or a tape, that was the physical way you could limit how many people listened to your song. But as soon as you went to digital music, you couldn't cap how many people listened to your song. So it lost a lot of its monetary value because it wasn't scarce. And so when I heard Andreas Antonopoulos say that, yeah, that's what Satoshi Nakamoto solved, was that it's called the double spend problem in computer science, but it's this fact that you couldn't make digital things scarce, but all of a sudden Bitcoin comes along and you could cap digital things for the first time. And so that's what clicked for me, because I said, well, if you're going to have money be digital, and we're in a digital age, money has to become digital. And so all of a sudden we have a mechanism in place that enables money to finally become digital. This is actually like really game changing. It's not just like a slight improvement on something before, it actually was a paradigm shifting technology. And that's why we've seen the crypto industry get to where it is and where it's probably going. It's as massive as it is because that was such a revolutionary technology that was invented in 2009.
Amazing. Maybe you can also share some about your entrepreneurship background too. I'm sure that listeners will be interested to find out more about you in that direction too.
Yeah. So I'm 36 years old now. My wife and I, we started our first business right after college when we were 22. We'd saved up a bunch of money through college. We both worked full time. We both graduated from college early. We knew early in college that we were going to get married. So we were driven. We were a good team. We graduated college right when the 2008 financial crisis happened. And so all that money we saved up, I had worked construction. So I was just getting paid cash. I didn't even have, tax records of my income. So I thought we could go out and we were going to buy a house. We went into the bank and we had a decent down payment, but no credit history. Outside of that, we had no assets to our name. And the bank just literally laughed us out of the bank. They said, you know what's going on right now? Everybody's losing their house. So we're not going to lend money to a guy that made cash construction job, payments or payroll and stuff like that. They just laughed us out of the bank. And so we had this, kind of nest egg of money. And so we said, at the time I was finishing up my master's degree in forensic psychology. So I had an undergrad degree in human behavioral science. I love the study of people and the way the mind works. That's part of why I eventually got into marketing. But at that time, I wanted to do it for criminal profiling. So anybody that's ever seen a scary movie and they're hunting down the serial killers, that's what I wanted to do. So I was actually studying that at a master's level. I was almost done with my master's degree when my wife and I got married. And we said, you know what? We did a total 180. We shifted direction and we opened a tanning salon of all things. And I went from, I'm thinking I'm going to be an FBI special agent to I'm running a tanning salon with my wife. It was like the biggest career shift ever. And so, you know what? She had this idea and it worked. I mean, we struck at the right time and the right community and all that kind of stuff. And the business grew. But over time, we recognized that more of our customers weren't coming in for tanning. They didn't really care to be tanned. It's because there had been a lot of new research on the benefits of vitamin D and sunshine exposure and things like that. So we were starting to tap into more of the holistic community, people that were like natural, essential oil people and those people that were doing holistic things for their health. And so then we pivoted the business from tanning and that sort of thing to infrared saunas. We still do the tanning beds, but we brand it as light therapy. So if there's a service where light can affect your body in some sort of positive way, where like red light therapy can help with scarring and acne and all sorts of skin conditions, we have infrared sauna that can help with joint problems or inflammation, and then we have the tanning that can stimulate vitamin D, which became very popular with COVID. People wanting to boost their immune systems. So over the years, we shifted from a tanning salon to we're now a light therapies business. We have a chain of salons or light therapy studios throughout Southern California. And it's gone very, very well. That's a business that's hands off for us at this point. We really just we're hands-off operators. We have managers and people in place that run those. And so that's enabled me to step more into the investing realm. In 2018, I also got to partake in a role that you're familiar with. I was the chief marketing officer for Ethereum blockchain for 3 years. It was a relatively small blockchain project. I really enjoyed the process. I got to help write the white paper for that project with the CEO. Marshall Clark is a good dude, and I just enjoyed that process. But in 2021, I had been in so many meetings with potential investors for that company, and people were confused by what we were doing. Even though we thought we were explaining our project in a very simple way, people were having a hard time wrapping their heads around it because they didn't understand what a blockchain was. They didn't understand what Bitcoin was. They didn't understand what smart contracts were or anything like that. And so we were pitching things that were like level 4 or 5 complicated topics to somebody that they might have been managing $100 million or $200 million, but they didn't understand the step one of that. And so we had just a ton of meetings with people. And so that's what inevitably led me to write my book. So I'm an entrepreneur that has, investing experience, and I have, I've studied Bitcoin for 10 years and all this kind of fun stuff. But it really came out of seeing this lack of understanding. I mean, we have about 1% of the world has adopted Bitcoin and cryptocurrency at this point. So that means there's the vast majority of people still don't understand this. And I would even say, even if 1% of people have adopted this, probably not even 1% of people understand it. I think there's a lot more people. I know I have friends that have invested in, Dogecoin or just any coin that they just could get their hands on, but they had no idea why they were doing it. They if you ask them, why do you hold this coin? They would say, well, I don't know. It goes up in value, I think, and they can't really tell you why or what mechanisms cause it to go up in value or why there's demand for it. And you know what? Those are all things that we break down in my book. We talk about market forces and what creates demand and why technologies matter and stuff. And so I think being able to explain these kind of basic tenets of cryptocurrency are where I'm at right now, kind of touring the world and just trying to spread knowledge and spread the love of the crypto community.
Yeah, I can definitely say that you have written an amazing book. Like I have mentioned in our conversation before we started, I have bought the book and I have started reading it. I still haven't finished it because I am reading like 5 or 6 books altogether. So I will get there for sure. But so far, it has explained all the topics that you have mentioned in a very simple way. So I'm sure that even my grandma would understand that, but she's not very much in crypto. So for now, I'll keep the book away from her. But when she's ready, I'll introduce her to the book. But there are a few very important things that I would be very happy if we can talk more about from your book. And the first one is, why does crypto even matter, Brian?
Well, I mean, going back to, I think it matters for a bunch of reasons, but I think that digital scarcity is a really important component. And we talked offline about proof of work a little bit. I think this concept of proof of work is a really important concept. To make it as simple as possible, I guess sometimes, that's the best way to talk about things, is that they're just base level, where it sounds almost like it's just too basic. But I was talking to somebody the other day and I said, why do you think that fiat currency doesn't work? And, they said, I don't know, because the Federal Reserve or the central bank can just print as much money as they want. And that's true. I said, that's exactly right. Why is that a problem? I said, because it requires no work. That's why it's a problem. It requires no work. If there was something like, that's what makes gold precious, right? Because even though there's gold deposits that we know that are in the ground, we know there's gold that hasn't been mined yet. But if you hold gold, you can be pretty confident that, 100 million tons of gold is not going to come on the market tomorrow, because in order to mine 100 million tons of gold, it would take so much work that it just couldn't happen quickly. And so you have this limiting factor that makes your gold worth something. It just can't poof new gold into existence. But fiat doesn't have that. There's nothing that limits it. Our Federal Reserve chairman, the head of our central bank in the United States during COVID, when people were worried, hey, how are you going to be able to stimulate the economy? How are you going to be able to get trillions of dollars printed and into the American people's hands in order to, keep us from going into a recession? He said, oh, don't worry. We don't even print our money. We can put $1 trillion into circulation with just like 3 strokes of a key on a keyboard. I mean, he was trying to make people not worried, but any of us that were looking at this were like, that's the problem with fiat currency, is that you can just put $1 trillion into circulation by hitting 0 and then enter. I mean, it's just so ridiculous with how easy it is to create fiat currency. And it's what all of our lives are based on. I mean, people spend all their lives chasing this stuff, and it's programmed to devalue. I mean, we spend 8 hours a day. The average person spends 8 hours a day working in a job trying to get this fiat currency. And if they hold on to it for too long, it's going to become less valuable. And it's just such a sad prospect. Fiat currency is built to inflate, and it's a problem where cryptocurrency, specifically Bitcoin or fixed supply coins, have this really cool component called proof of work, right? Or there's a mechanism that limits it. So even if you could argue this with proof of stake or some other, but I'll just talk about proof of work. In this case, I like proof of work the best, I think, at this point. That's kind of my conclusion. But it's the opposite of fiat currency. Fiat currency requires no work. Proof of work, literally, you have to prove how much work you did in order to create it. So we have a very predictable amount of currency that is coming online. You can't create more just because you work harder or anything like that. there's only so much that comes into circulation every day, every week, every month. And so that provides a very fair and equitable monetary system for everybody. Humans have never experienced a truly fair and equitable financial system before, where the king didn't get to dictate it or the central bank didn't get to dictate it. We're literally at the beginning of an era of human history where we're starting to have the world's first ever truly decentralized financial systems. And so that's a much bigger idea. I'm excited by the prospect that I think that Bitcoin's going to go to $1 million someday. I actually think Bitcoin's going to go much higher than $1 million. I'm sure seasonal tokens are going to go much higher than they are right now. I'm excited by that, but I'm really excited from like what does this do for humanity type of thing? What does this do for somebody that lives here in California? I live in a very wealthy country. I live in a very wealthy state in a wealthy country. I think, but there's still poor people here. I know lots of wealthy people. I know lots of poor people that live here as well. And what does this do for the people in El Salvador? What does this do for the people in Zimbabwe? It gives everybody a pipeline to the worldwide economy where nobody's in charge and nobody's rigging the system. So to me, I mean, that's just the thing that jumps off the bat to me. And because I talk so long, I won't go into these other issues yet. I want to let you get your piece in. But yeah, there's a bunch of reasons like that make me really excited. And it's not just the price. The price is so much fun. It's so much fun. But what this can do for humanity and in terms of building wealth and building prosperity for people, it's really exciting.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Like giving the rights to print as much money as you want to one person is a lot of responsibility, and we are humans and we tend to do mistakes, and it's normal to be like that. So I definitely believe that crypto can solve this and can just leave it to the fairness of the world, of the nature. So if you do the work, you get what you have worked for. It's not just like someone getting money because it's part of government system or things like that. You should do your work and then get paid for that, and it's fair, and you have to be paid in a fair manner too, because we know that in third-party countries, this is how they call them, it's very easy to pay a very, very small amount of money, and you call them workers, but maybe they feel like slavers. So I believe that crypto, like you said, can solve this. And there are a lot more reasons in your book. I can definitely say that. But you have been talking a lot in your book about Bitcoin. So what makes Bitcoin so special?
Well, I think Bitcoin, it's at this point, it's the most decentralized blockchain in the market. So there's this natural tendency where blockchains start out very centralized, and the team really has the intention to decentralize it over time. Then these blockchains will become more decentralized, but it's just because Bitcoin was the first one in the race. It has the most network effect, the broadest appeal. It has the most market share. And so there's the most interested parties in decentralizing it. So part of that decentralization not only lends to the fairness and, again, taking the power away from a central party, which is what we just talked about, but it also has to do with security. Bitcoin's the most secure computer network in the history of humanity. It's very, very secure. And so if something's going to store the world's money on it, and if it's going to be used by countries, which there's two countries, there's El Salvador and the Central African Republic, which already accept Bitcoin as it's nationally recognized currency. If we get to the point where more and more countries are storing their nation's wealth on this, it has to be the most secure computer network in the world. And so it has that. And decentralization, part of, just to elaborate on that for somebody that says, well, why does decentralization make it more secure? Imagine if the Bitcoin network, if every miner in the world, everybody that runs a node for Bitcoin, imagine them as a switch. And in order to hack or to turn off the Bitcoin network, there's not just one switch somewhere, or there's not just 2 or 3 switches. There's millions and millions of switches all over the world. And nobody knows where they all are because miners don't know where each other are. Some of them might, because some of them might communicate, but I can mine Bitcoin and I can do it secretly in my basement with nobody knowing. And there's no way for anybody to find me to switch off my node. So as long as my node runs, you could turn off every other node in the world And as long as there's one node running still, then the Bitcoin network survives. If there's a nuclear war and half the world's wiped out, Bitcoin survives because the entire world, Bitcoin's across the entire world. It's not centralized on any one continent and in any one country. If there's a massive power outage, if the internet goes down, you can use satellite to transmit Bitcoin transactions. And so there's so much security. There's so much robustness to the network. That's one of the reasons why Bitcoin is special. And it's not that other blockchains can't get to that point, but Bitcoin has a huge head start because it's just had more time to do that. And so, I think that that's a really compelling reason for why Bitcoin matters as money, because it's so secure, it's so decentralized. And so it's not the base protocol. The biggest weakness is it's not very fast. There's a lot of other faster blockchains out there. I love Bitcoin Lightning Network. I don't know if you've ever messed around with Bitcoin Lightning payments. It's super fast. It's basically free. So the Lightning Network is a really good solution to fixing Bitcoin's scalability of being able to be fast and still be decentralized and secure and all those things. So I think Bitcoin, as far as money, really matters. But there's other components of society that need decentralization. Money fixes a lot of things, but it doesn't fix everything. And so I think that smart contracts and oracles and NFTs for property rights and all these different things, I think have a place in our decentralized future. And all of those things, I think we should be excited about. So we were talking offline about Bitcoin maxis and Bitcoin maximalism. And so I think that's one of the biggest pushbacks I've gotten on my book is that it's called Bitcoin evangelism. And so I think Bitcoin maximalists are reading this thinking that I'm only going to talk about Bitcoin. And I don't know if you're familiar with Robert Breedlove. He runs a big podcast called What is Money? And he calls himself a freedom maximalist. And I love that terminology because I think that all of these different components of crypto, there are certainly some scams in crypto. Certainly there's people with bad motives in crypto. But I think the technology, if we continue to progress it forward, it's going to decentralize. Like we talked about fairness in money a second ago. I think we're going to talk about fairness in investing opportunities that are outside, not just money opportunities, but like fairness in being able to invest in a company. There's DAOs. There's these things called decentralized autonomous organizations where you can be a relatively poor person and buy a DAO token in, say, a football team. You could own a football team, or you could be a relatively poor person, but you can buy some tokens that show that you own a baseball team here in the United States. And so your people are going to be opened up to investing opportunities that they never had a chance to be a part of before because things were just so centralized. And so I think the prospect of that across all of crypto is a really cool prospect.
Yeah, Brian, I think that I can stay listening to you talking about the bright future of Bitcoin the whole day. That I'm sure that our listeners will be very excited to hear all that you are saying. But at the same time, there's some, let's say, not very good things based on my opinion that are happening. And I want to switch the topic a little bit to this matter because it definitely worries me a little, or maybe even more than that. And I would be very happy to hear your thoughts about stable coins, and especially those that the governments are going to create.
Yeah. Well, first off, I think that stable coins, or specifically central bank digital currencies, CBDCs for your audience, I think those are going to be the best marketing ever for Bitcoin and truly decentralized cryptocurrencies because they're highly centralized cryptocurrencies. And so I think that stable coins, I remember when I first saw stable coins and when I first was seeing them on exchanges and stuff, I remember thinking, what's the point of a stable coin? It doesn't go up in value. And, obviously quickly you think about it for a second, and you're like, okay, it's because you don't have to transfer back and forth into fiat, and you can hold it on an exchange. It's for traders and things like that. But I remember being frustrated by them. Like, why do these things even exist? But I think we're starting to see some utility with them in developing nations where maybe they don't want to be exposed to Bitcoin. Maybe they don't like the volatility of Bitcoin. And so they use, say, Tether or some sort of stable coin to transact. That's great for this like short-term purpose, but those aren't decentralized. Tether's a company. It's not freedom money like we would say with Bitcoin. And so they're still very centralized. And then like you said, there's government central bank currencies. There's government stable coins. And I think that Yeah, I talk about that a bit in the book. And I think there's going to be, and one of the most important things that I try to touch on in a little bit in the book. And as my wife was reading it, she said, wow, you almost sounded like as if you were for central bank digital currencies. I said, I'm not. I hope that comes across that I'm not. But I think it's really important that we understand what our governments are going to tell us are the positive benefits of central bank digital currencies, because we need to know what the positive benefits are, because there's always going to be something, right? Like the best lie you can tell is the lie that has a little bit of truth to it. And so I think that central bank digital currencies, they're really this big lie to the people that like, oh, this is going to be so good for you. Ultimately, it's not going to be good for you, but there's going to be some beneficial components. For example, like stimulus checks. I don't know how much, where you're from, how much government, stimulus happened during COVID, but Americans got a lot of free currency during COVID because our central bank said, okay, well, we shut everybody down. And so the economy is going to implode if we don't give everybody money to pay their bills. That took weeks or months. There was people that didn't get payments for months. And so they defaulted on loans, or they defaulted on their rent, or whatever it happened to be. With central bank digital currencies, they're literally going to be able to instantaneously fund your account. So people that like big spending government programs and people that like entitlements, that's going to be a really positive thing for those people. They're going to get their money fast. But here's the other part. It's programmable money. So just like that money went into your account, it can come back out of your account. And so that's a problem. And that's a scary thought. And so right now in the United States and around the world, we're dealing with inflation. We're dealing with really significant inflation. Well, one of the best tools to fight inflation that the governments don't have right now, but they will with central bank digital currencies, inflation isn't just an increase in the supply of currency. It's an increase in the supply of currency times the velocity of currency. And so what that means is the government could give everybody $1 million tomorrow. That doesn't cause inflation. People think it would. It doesn't necessarily cause inflation. If the government gives everybody $1 million tomorrow and then everybody puts it under their mattress, then there's no inflation. But if the government gives everybody $1 million tomorrow and then everybody starts spending it, that causes inflation. And if there's no increase in goods and services that are being created, then in the economy, then you get inflation. That's what's happening around the world. There's this, governments stimulated the economy and then people spent that money really quickly. Well, all a government with a central bank digital currency would have to do to stop inflation, give everybody a bunch of money, and then they could just freeze it. Or they could just say, you can only spend $10 today, or you can only spend $100 today. So you might have $1,000 in your account, but they could limit how much you could spend on any given day or on any given hour to decrease the velocity of money and therefore decrease inflation. So it's kind of a scary tool that governments have never had in past inflations, that they're going to say this next time. Oh, governments say this all the time. We stimulated economies. We gave out a lot of money for free to people, but this time's different. We have different tools in place. And that's what's happened every other time in history that there's been crazy inflation. Governments thought that this time would be different and they wouldn't get hyperinflation. It happens every single time. Every fiat currency ever ends in hyperinflation. And so it's just a matter of time. Governments will say, this is the tool. CBDCs are the key to making sure that we can have big spending, we can give people money, but we're going to have programmable controls on people's money. And that goes into determining what you can and can't buy. I mean, imagine if, I don't know what your stance is on the vaccine or not, but imagine if you didn't get the vaccine and your bank account requires you to do it. And if you didn't want to, or you didn't think you needed it, well, guess what? Your bank account's not going to work unless you do what the government asks you to do. So there's a lot of big problems with it, but it's important to understand as the governments are starting to pitch us on how great these things are going to be, we need to understand ahead of time what those promises will be so that we can not be too wooed by them.
Yeah, Brian, honestly, I have been very scared mainly on the things that you just mentioned, because I was thinking in that way that they're going to control even more our lives, like having the fear that someone can press a button and you can spend a dime and you can buy a bread for your family. Like, it makes me sweat. Like, I'm really scared of this, and I hope that there will be a solution. But I don't know. For now, I just don't see it. I hope that someone is going to find it. But yeah, this podcast is more about positive things, positive topics and things like that. So maybe we shouldn't go in a rabbit hole about that. Yeah.
Well, I'm optimistic. I think that the crypto community is so much more advanced in this field. That's what's been so great about it. This technology started with the people. The government learned about it later. We all got to learn about it first. And so they're going to try and do these CBDCs. But the cool thing is we have a running head start. We have infrastructure. We have the infrastructure of the internet. We have all these tools of decentralization that are already at our fingertips. You and I are able to communicate across the internet right now, and we're kind of forming this network connection where my network is integrating with your network. And so that's the optimism I would say in this. People think that governments are all powerful, and people think that just because other people are conspiring to do really bad things, that for some reason that means they're going to win. That's not the case. World War II, it was unquestionable that Adolf Hitler in Germany was the most powerful force in the world at the time that was willing to do some pretty crazy things. Everybody thought they're going to steamroll the world and they're going to win. They didn't win. They just didn't, because there was an equal and opposing force around the world that stopped that. And I think that that's what we have. We have a head start. We're more advanced in the private sector of crypto than the governments are. They're playing catch up. They're a decade behind the private sector. We already have decentralized money. We already have the ability to transact outside of their central bank digital currencies. So I think the positive thing is that's going to act like a check. Maybe we might not see these really tyrannical, these really dictatorial central bank digital currencies. Governments might have to make them a little bit more open, a little bit more transparent, because there is a free market option in Bitcoin, in Ethereum, and these other currencies. So we might see freer countries adopt a little bit more open type of central bank digital currency. I don't think that's going to stop China. China's already had a central bank digital currency, and they seem to be going full force with surveillance and all those types of things. And those countries are going to do that. But I think there's going to be plenty of countries. I think there will be countries that adopt CBDCs, but because Bitcoin's acting like a check on those things, they don't want all of their people to flood over to Bitcoin. They don't want to say, we're so draconian that you guys have to use Bitcoin. I think they're going to want to try and be reasonable. So that's my optimistic spin on this.
Yeah, I didn't know that there is even an optimistic way of thinking about CBDCs, but thank you for explaining this to me. Like, I feel a little bit less, but very, very less scared than before the conversation. Yeah, not much different, but yeah. I hope that what you're saying will come to life and it will be like that, but I have my big doubts. But let's see, the future will definitely show. But yeah, like I said, this is a podcast for more optimistic things and investing. So let's switch again and talk a little bit about investments, because I know that you are very experienced in that too. So can you share with us what are the investment principles that you would advise someone to have in order to be a successful investor in crypto?
Yeah. Well, there's an entire chapter of my book devoted to this. And for your audience that hasn't gotten the chance to read it, I break this down. And I think it's really important to approach crypto investing in understanding that there's different crypto asset classes. So let's back up for a second. If you go and you're going to just start investing in the stock market, you're going to do traditional investing, you look at different companies you put them in different baskets. So for example, Facebook's a tech company. It's a social media company. You would look at that different than you would look at, say, Coca-Cola, for example. Both big companies, both multi-billion-dollar companies, but they do completely different things. One's been around for 15 years and, very powerful company in Facebook, but it's a technology. Coca-Cola's been around for, 150 years, be more stable. And so you would look around the market and you say, okay, well, here's a utility company. This is a gas company. Here's a vehicle manufacturer. You would break investments down into different categories. And so I think that we need to take that old wisdom of investing and just apply that to a new frontier like cryptocurrency. And so in the book, I break down, here's some different asset classes within cryptocurrency. So Bitcoin, it's like a digital gold or a money. Ethereum, it's a smart contract platform, or Cardano or Tron or EOS or Solana. There's all these, there's a whole group of blockchains that are smart contract platforms. And then you go beyond that. And then there's Oracle protocols, which are a really important component of smart contracts. And then there's NFTs, and then there's DeFi, and there's decentralized exchanges, which is kind of like DeFi, but it's kind of different. So it's important to break things down into those different asset classes and identify what it is that you're investing in. I don't only invest in Bitcoin. That's my favorite, because I think it's good money. I think it's digital gold. I like how the supply halves. I love how there's only 21 million ever. I like the fact that so decentralized, all those things we talked about earlier. So Bitcoin's my first and kind of primary investment, but I do go outside of that. And so when people ask me off the street, they say like, I heard you're into Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, but what's the difference between Bitcoin and Ethereum? Like, are they competitors, or are they both, the same thing and they're just trying to compete for the top spot? And I said, no, not at all. Think about your iPhone, or think about your smartphone. On the iPhone, we have Apple Pay, which is like how you go around and you pay for things. And then there's also the App Store on the iPhone. Those two things aren't competing with one another. They're two parts of the iPhone. So one, if I'm going to go check out and I'm going to buy a soda, I use Apple Pay. If I want to download Netflix, or if I want to download TikTok or any kind of app, I can go to the App Store. They serve two different purposes. And so when you say things like that, people are like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like decentralized applications versus gold. Like those are two obviously different things, but why do NFTs matter? NFTs are a really important thing. I think right now it's a very fun era of NFTs. We're seeing more fun gaming applications to it. I think the long-term implications of NFTs are going to be property rights. I think that there's going to be, I just released a video on my YouTube channel the other day about the integration between 3D printing and NFTs. I think that, in the not too distant future, you're going to go into the metaverse. You're going to pick out a pair of Nikes or some sort of shoe that you like in your home office. Instead of just a printer that prints paper, you're going to have a 3D printer, and you bought the NFT. So Nike's giving you the permission to now print your own shoe from your house. Nike doesn't have to spend money on shipping. They don't have to spend money on manufacturing, any of that kind of stuff. They get pure profit. You just bought the NFT. Now you get to 3D print your shoe in your home office, and it's ready to go. And so I think there's some really interesting integrations from technologies that are coming around the corner. But yeah, NFTs are different than Bitcoin. They're different than Ethereum. They're different than oracles and stuff like that. So that's the first thing I would do in investing, is identify what asset classes you want in your portfolio, and then pick an allocation. Like, do I want 60% of my portfolio in Bitcoin? And I want 30% of it in this. I want 10% of it in this. Maybe you want even percentages across the board. But that's a good way to kind of start looking at investing in cryptocurrencies. I think that's my personal opinion.
Okay. Perfect. So we both know that there are so many people out there that are calling themselves experts, that are giving a lot of, let's say, bad information that is misguiding people very much, and they're losing money because of that. So my next question for you is, are there any advices related to crypto investing that people are hearing all the time, but they're guiding them in the wrong direction based on your experience?
Yeah. First off, I just wouldn't take a YouTube video or a social media post as a good reason for why something's going to go up or down. I've thought a lot. I don't have the time to do it, but here's a free idea that if anybody wants to start a YouTube channel that I know would absolutely crush it, take all the predictions that people make online about the price of a cryptocurrency and do a before and after video and just show everybody whether they were right on that price. Because you're going to get the price right sometimes when you make a call, but more than not, these people, they just don't know. And so I remember I paid a lot of attention to XRP in 2018, 2019. I was just doing my homework on XRP to see if there was something really there. And I think they might have their niche within banking transfers and stuff like that. But as I was listening to people in the XRP community, they have a really strong community. And I remember hearing all the time, they would say, some insider from XRP said that XRP is going to go to $100 this month. Or, some person knows this, the chief technology officer says it's going to this price. If you know anything about economics, it doesn't matter. You could have the best technology tomorrow you can do something, that, oh, we're going to make a big announcement tomorrow and this is going to, rock the world. That doesn't mean the price is going to change. When I worked at Athenium, I was the chief marketing officer. I had no idea what was going to happen to the price tomorrow because I couldn't determine what market forces were going to happen. We would make a big announcement and the price wouldn't go up. The price might go down the next day. We'd make we'd announce some new users or some cool segment of the project, and the price would go down. And then one day the price would shoot up. It'd go up 40%. And we'd find out that somebody tweeted about us and it went viral or something like that. And we had no control over it. So just because an insider says or a chart person says that I know that the price is going up, that should only be like one part of your research. It doesn't mean that you completely disregard that, because there are people out there that have really good insights. There are people that look at charts and it can be an indicator, but it's not a golden ticket. It's not like a crystal ball that tells you the future. You have to make that one part of your kind of investigation. That's another thing I talk about in the book is I go through my process of how I pick things to put in my portfolio. And a lot of it, one of the simplest rules I have is that I'd never invest in a cryptocurrency unless I've known about it for at least 2 weeks. And that sounds stupid. It sounds like you should probably know about something for a lot longer than 2 weeks. But the reason why I put that in there is because I remember when I was new investing in altcoins, I'd only invested at the beginning in Bitcoin for a while. And then when I started investing in altcoins, I remember I would hear about an altcoin and I was like, I got to jump on this. And so I'd run out and I would buy it that night. And then I would find out in the days after it, like what the project even did. And, I didn't know anything about it. And so I found that if I just told myself I'm going to wait at least 2 weeks to do my due diligence, then I can let some of the excitement wear off. And hopefully that gives me a little bit better perspective on the project. Am I still excited about this project? Or is it just because somebody told me it's going to the moon? And if I don't buy it tonight, then I'm going to miss out. Like, that's not a good way to structure your investments. It's just, that's a good way to go poor over the long haul, is by always going off of somebody's hype or a really compelling tweet or something like that. All those things can factor into your decision, but those shouldn't be the end all be all for why you buy into something. Do your homework. Watch. Hopefully your community's sitting here and they're spending time listening to you talk about, your project. And it's through that process of kind of sitting in something and thinking about it, thinking on it for the long term. That's how we kind of really find conviction in the things that we invest in.
Okay. All that you're saying makes total sense. And I really enjoy what you just said. But I'm wondering, during all this time of investments in crypto, and I suppose mainly Bitcoin, are there any costly mistakes that you have been doing as a crypto investor?
I definitely say in my early years, I was enticed by trading. And I have friends that do trading and they do it quite well. They use pretty sophisticated software and they're really good at market analysis and things like that, or technical analysis. I'm not good at technical analysis at all by any stretch. I'm pretty good at fundamental analysis. And so fundamental analysis, if you were to ask the question of what's the difference in terms of investing between fundamental analysis and technical analysis, I'd say technical analysis can probably give you, if you're really clued into it, better short-term understanding of the market, where fundamental analysis probably isn't going to help you too much in the short term, but it's great for long-term predictions. So when I've tried to do the short-term thing, it's just never worked out for me. The only time I've ever lost money in crypto is by trying to trade. It seems what happens, and I think this is for a lot of people that are new to the market, they say, wow, okay, so let's say, Bitcoin's the coin we're talking about. Bitcoin went up to 20,000. Now it went back down to 18,000. Now it went back up to 20,000. And you see that happen a few times and you just say to yourself, well, gosh, it's going to do it again. So why don't I just bet on that happening? And then, of course, what are the markets? The markets are psychology. They're psychological. So if you're thinking that, there's a good chance that other people are thinking that. What makes the difference between good short-term traders and bad short-term traders like me is that I'm going with the crowd, where good short-term traders have trained themselves and they're using tools to be able to think counter to the general psychology of the market. And even then, there's still a lot of people that don't do it well. So I would just be careful with trading. You have to be really, really sharp with what you're doing. That's not something that I'm particularly good at. Because I study fundamental analysis, I'm pretty slow to invest in a new project. But when I do invest in a new project, over time, they've pretty consistently, almost 100%, have done well from the time that I invest in them to even right now in a market crash. My portfolio is up very substantially from where it was several years ago because I've always invested with a long-term arc. So it allows me to withstand, market downturns and things like that. It's kind of a bummer because yes, my portfolio is lower than it was, say, a year ago, but my portfolio is still much higher than it was, say, 3 years ago. And so, yeah, it's just time frames can mess with you a little bit, but that's been my strength is long term. My weakness is definitely short term.
So if I understand you right, you are saying that your main and only mistake as a crypto investor was or has been doing day trading, not doing like long-term investing.
I mean, that's probably my biggest mistakes. I'm sure I've made, I've made plenty of mistakes. I think that'd be pretty arrogant to say that I haven't. I think there's probably projects early on in my career that I invested in without having done proper due diligence. I think that a lot of these things that as I've grown and matured in the market, some of it is trial and error, that sort of thing. But yeah, I think that's probably the biggest mistake is the day trading side of it. Yeah.
Okay, great. So that's really nice. And I'm sure that, like I said, you have learned a lot as a trader and long-term investor. But if you have to give only one advice to the younger version of Brian, what this advice would be about crypto investing?
I would say to keep your emotion at the door. It would just have to be to take the emotionality out of it. Because if we allow our emotions to drive our decisions, we're going to almost always make the wrong decision if we're investing emotionally. And so, and like I said, I think even early on with Bitcoin in particular, I had really long-term convictions from the time I bought Bitcoin in the first place, but I allowed myself to stay up at night worrying about the market if my portfolio was down. So it wasn't necessarily that I made a ton of bad decisions with my portfolio, but it also eats away at you a little bit. And so you can't live life like that. If you're going to be an investor from now until the time you retire, or even beyond the time you retire, because then your retirement is probably your investment account. That's what you're living off of. You cannot allow the daily fluctuations or even the yearly fluctuations to affect that. If you're only bought into things that you have deep conviction in, then it should allow you to rest a little bit easier at night and to tell yourself, sometimes you need to I would probably give myself permission to say, hey, it's okay not to sweat this right now. It's okay not to worry about this. Because sometimes we think that we have to worry. Like our worry is what's going to make us make the right decision. And it's the exact opposite. It's the exact opposite. We need to sometimes let go. We need to sometimes take the emotionality out of it in order to make good, clear decisions.
Great. I totally agree with you that emotions are something that are affecting our decisions, not only in investing, but in everything in life. Also, in a not very good way.
Yeah.
And if we allow them to affect our decisions in full, like in most of the cases, we make the wrong decision.
Yeah. And even when the market's up, and that even goes true. Like right now, we're talking through the perspective of a down market. It's really easy to feel like an idiot or like you made the wrong decisions or did I waste my time and my energy? When the market goes the other way, when you're on cloud 9 and your portfolio is up 1,000%, also don't think that you're a genius. Have a balanced perspective. Don't be in total euphoria and think that the market's only going to go up and that you're only going to get richer and richer, because then the crash from that is also going to feel detrimental. So there's a great saying, and I love the saying. I don't think I quoted it in the book, but I probably should have. Things are never as bad as they seem, and they're never as good as they seem. They're somewhere in the middle. And so just making sure on both ends of the spectrum that we're kind of in check. And it doesn't mean that we should be down on ourselves when things are good, but it's just not to be like too cocky, too arrogant. Arrogance is also detrimental in the same way that anxiety can be detrimental.
Absolutely. And it really hurts when you are falling from a very high. So being realistic about the situation is definitely a good solution and option to survive and live longer. So we have been talking a lot about investing, but I suppose we have a lot of listeners that are right now joining crypto or are going to join crypto soon and things like that. But they are wondering how or what is the best way for them to learn more about crypto investing? What is your take about that?
Well, I mean, I'm going to pitch my book again on this one because I have an entire section about that. Sorry, I was trying to think of an answer that didn't come back to that. So if you're asking me, I wrote down all of my thoughts. It's in the book, Bitcoin Evangelism. There's an entire section. It's literally called Digital Asset Investing Principles. And I walk through a process. And here's the thing. The thing I say at the beginning of the chapter is, here's my process. And you can choose to do this process. I know people that have a similar process. I know people that have a different process. The thing that you need, whether you use mine or not, is that you have a process. You need to instill discipline into your investing. And so if your investing doesn't have principles, like if you don't say, I'm going to invest consistently, if you, like we talked about earlier, if we just invest emotionally. So am I just going to, like, every time I get $1,000 in my bank account, I'm just going to buy $1,000 of whatever crypto I feel like at that time, and whatever my friend at school or whatever my friend at work just happened to mention that day? Like, that's not a good way. That's a very lazy way. You can see the difference in a life that is filled with discipline. I'm not just talking about crypto right now. I'm talking about life in general. Look at the people that you know that are healthy. Look at the people that you know that are vibrant. They have, now nobody's perfect, but they have a level of discipline that goes throughout their life, right? They're not staying up all night playing video games every night. They're not up, eating just terrible food constantly. They're not, just destroying relationships. They're being disciplined in many areas of their life. A lot of times that stuff translates over to good investing. If you can wake up in the morning and make your bed, if you can wake up in the morning and get things done and be productive, start off by creating disciplines in your life in other areas. And if you can create discipline in your life in general, then you can carry that over into investing. So I would say a holistic, healthy life is probably one of the most underrated things in investing, is that, good discipline, holistic, healthy living in a general sense is a good way to start off as an investor.
But is there like something like a place, except of course your book, where do you think people can start with their crypto investing journey? Like, some people advise others to just start crypto investing and they'll learn from that. Some advise like start with this YouTube channel. Some advise read these books and things like that. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think somebody that I respect that looks at life through the investment lens is Anthony Pompliano. I like his take on things. I think that there's some good YouTube channels out there. I think that Robert Breedlove's What is Money show is another really good one, another good resource that talks about fundamentals. And so, there's investing strategy baked into that. So yeah, I think those two channels in particular. And I would say, as far as like the strategy for getting started, start small and build up. I tell people all the time, invest a percentage that correlates to how well you understand what you're investing in. So if you understand the stock market, if you understand companies very, very well, you have a 50%, this is kind of an arbitrary number, but say you have a 50% understanding of the stock market, well, invest 50% of your investments in the stock market. If you have a 20% understanding of cryptocurrency, then invest 20% of your investment portfolio into cryptocurrency. If you have a 1% understanding, that's okay. Just invest 1% and you're going to always keep it up. And as your knowledge grows, your conviction is going to grow, and then your investment's going to grow. And probably by that time, the market's going to grow. And so you're going to feel smart, and then you're going to feel, renewed in your conviction. And so that would be my suggestion, is to start small. Everybody thinks that they're going to miss out if they don't jump on right away. If they don't start right now, then they're not going to get that next big run up. That's just not true. Just don't. That's getting back to the emotional part. So just have a 1% understanding of crypto, invest 1%. That will grow over time. And having invested in something will cause you to study it more. So just hit the news websites. I like decrypt.com. I like the Daily Hodl. I like Bitcoin Magazine. I think there's some really good news sites out there. Now, I would stay away. Again, I don't, like I said, I don't like technical analysis for my own investing. And I don't think technical analysis really tells you anything about a cryptocurrency. It might tell you it may tell you if the price is going up or down, but it's not going to tell you what that project does. So the news articles around that, the new release of a platform, new adoption by users, that's going to come out on news websites, and that will help you understand. That'll help you gain a better understanding. Maybe Ethereum Like they just did the merge a month ago. That was pretty well covered on the news website. So if you wanted to know a little bit more about the Ethereum merge, like browsing the different news websites would have given you different takes on whether this is good, whether this is bad. Like maybe this is going to be good for price, but maybe it's not good for governance, those types of things. So it's going to give you a nuanced discussion with those. And so I think the news websites are a great resource as well.
Really nice, really nice. Yeah, and I totally agree with you that sometimes because of the FOMO, we are doing some things that should take more time, like more research before we actually do it. But yeah, we are emotional creatures, and this is what makes us different from animals. This is not the only thing, but it is one of the things that make us different. So sometimes it's okay to fall in the trap of emotions, but it's not good to live in this trap all the time. So before we finish, I have a question for you that I ask all of my guests, and it's really important for our podcast. And it is like, how do you think a person can do more investing rather than gambling in crypto?
Mm-hmm. That's a really good question. Can I ask you, what are some tips that you give to people on that? Because I get asked this question a lot. It's a great question. I'm really interested to kind of absorb some of your knowledge on this, though.
Okay, so it seems that I'm the guest now.
I know. I'm sorry. That's like that's the rudest thing ever. That is not appropriate when you're doing an interview. I'm just really interested because you're a marketing guy, and so you have a marketing mind, and so yeah, I'm just curious.
Yeah, so if I have to talk about marketer, it will be definitely different than talking as a crypto investor, because I'm also a crypto investor. Honestly, what I'm telling people that it is better to think more as an investor than as a gambler is something that you mentioned in the episode, and which is like check and think more about the fundamentals of the project, make your research very, very extensively, like focus on the team, on the goals. And here comes the marketer part. If you want to be a real investor, but also think as a marketer, you have to search and find the answer of these two very, very important questions. First is, what's the massive pain or problem that the project is solving? And the second one is, this offer, like the presentation of this solution, has been done in a proper way. Or I can say it in another way. Have these guys done the job properly? So when you see the website, you fully understand the offer and you feel very tempted to jump in, or you have some doubts. So if these two answers are obvious and you don't have to think much about them, and everything else is perfect, like the team is perfect and other fundamentals, then I believe that you are more as an investor than a gambler. This is what I would say.
See, this is great that I asked the question. I mean, it was a little bit rude, but that was that was a wonderful answer. I think we should have reversed this interview. It would have been more interesting if you were talking. But no, that was fantastic. Yeah, I mean, and this is the one thing. And so people ask me, why is my book called Bitcoin Evangelism? It's not called Crypto Evangelism. I really enjoy cryptocurrencies. And like you said, you have to assess the cryptocurrency project on a case-by-case basis. And so is this project if the goal is to decentralize lemonade stands, well, if that project becomes super successful and it takes 100% of the lemonade stand market, like, is that going to be lucrative? like even if that project becomes really successful, is there anything behind it? Like, is there a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, even if they were to execute on it? And then, then the second question is like, well, yeah, maybe the market's big. Maybe we're trying to decentralize Google or something like that, and search engines. Like, okay, that's a big market, but is this the team to execute? And what you said is spot on. But regarding the Bitcoin comment I was making there, this is one of the things that I would say that where Bitcoin, I don't think in particular, is speculative. I have people tell me all the time, I have older family members, they say, well, how are you investing in Bitcoin? It's so speculative. And I'd say that something is speculative when the problem it's trying to solve is it's in the future. Like the qualities that it contains, or the qualities that it has, are something that are going to be developed over time. Like there's an evolution in that project that needs to happen in order for it to attain those qualities. Bitcoin, for example, already has the qualities of limited supply. It already has the qualities of peer-to-peer payments. It already has the quality of censorship resistance and fungibility and divisibility, all the qualities of sound money. And so the pitch for Bitcoiners is a pretty simple one, is that Bitcoin is a better version of money than fiat. Fiat is unlimited. It's opaque. Nobody outside of a room of a small group of people control it, where Bitcoin's decentralized. And so I would say Bitcoin isn't speculative because it already has those qualities. If you believe in sound money, if you are a gold bug or somebody that believes in sound money, Bitcoin already has those qualities. Those aren't qualities that are going to be built into it 10 years from now. Yes, Bitcoin might have better properties 10 years from now. It might have smart contracts built on top of it. It might have other functionality built on top of it. But the qualities that it already has are things that are worth investing in to me. And so if a project already has the qualities that of what it's trying to do, if it already has the qualities, if it already has the characteristics of the problem it's trying to solve, and it just hasn't reached adoption yet, then I think that's a really good place to start, right? Like, imagine if you and I created a cryptocurrency right now and we said, let's use that Google example, we said we're going to decentralize search engines. Well, if the blockchain we created is just a copy of Bitcoin, Bitcoin doesn't have any of the qualities needed to decentralize search, right? Like those qualities don't pertain to that. So even though we have the same exact code as Bitcoin, we don't have the qualities necessary to decentralize search. And so that's a good question. We keep talking about fundamental analysis, but read into the project. What qualities does it already have? Is it decentralized? Is it fast? Like you're depending on what you're trying to do, you're going to need different qualities. The Bitcoin base layer is slow, very secure, and very decentralized. That works great for money because if you want faster things, you can build on Lightning infrastructure and things like that. If you want to do DeFi and things like that, other things where there's lots of little transactions, something like Solana that's really fast might be a good solution for something like DeFi. Unfortunately, Solana is not very secure, so it's been getting hacked a lot. I think that will change in time. I think Solana will become more resistant to that. But again, that's kind of that point. Solana has some qualities that suit DeFi, but it doesn't have all the qualities. Like you can't have a DeFi protocol that lacks security because people won't trust their funds on there. So what point of the journey is the project that you're investing in on? Like what point are you at? If you're at the very beginning and it doesn't have any of those qualities, then just understand you might like the concept. And so it might be worth a small portion of your portfolio, but just understand that that's more speculation. Where on the other side of things, you're investing in sound qualities, sound principles. For example, Warren Buffett, he invests in companies like Coca-Cola. There's no speculation when you're investing in Coca-Cola. You know exactly what you're getting. You're getting a soft drink company that's been around for 100 years. It already has all of the qualities. When you're investing in, TikTok or something new, it's like, yes, this is a new company, but where are they going to be 10 years from now? Like, are they trying to do a whole lot more? So that would be kind of how I would assess that question on a not so short answer. Sorry.
Yeah, but I'm sure that our listeners are already used to your not so short answer, so you shouldn't be worried about that. So before you share more about how people can find more about you and connect with you, I would ask you to tell me this. Is there something that you believe we should mention right now before we finish the podcast and we haven't said so far, and it is important for our listeners to know if they decide to do crypto investing or they have already started doing crypto investing?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question one more time? I'm so sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. So is there something that you think that we have missed in our conversation to say to all the people that are already in crypto investing or are planning to start doing crypto investing, and it is important for them to know about?
I'm sure there is. With cryptocurrency, one of the great things is that you can store it yourself. I would say that's a big consideration, that it's not something that should be scary at first. So I wouldn't make that be something, I don't want to invest in cryptocurrency because then I have to store it myself and do all this really sophisticated stuff. But I would just keep that in the back of your mind for as your portfolio grows, that you're probably not going to want to leave, your crypto assets on exchanges, that's a pretty important thing, because I've had exchanges that I've used in the past where within months of me moving funds off of them, the crypto exchange went out of business. And so, if I had kept my assets on there, I would have completely lost them. And so by the grace of God, was able to get those off before that had happened. And so that's a very real risk that worth being aware of. But outside of that, I would come back and just continue to absorb content. Make this something that is part of your discipline, is exposing yourself to content and differing ideas. I'm a guy that really likes Bitcoin, but challenge my ideas. Challenge me and say, Bitcoin's too slow. I'm looking for a newer, faster, more innovative blockchain. Like, those are all good conversations to have. And so challenge the status quo, challenge ideas. That just because I'm on a show and I've written a book doesn't mean that my ideas shouldn't be challenged. And so that's part of the process. As we challenge ideas, maybe you'll eventually agree with me, maybe you won't, and you'll come up with a better idea. And so that would be part of that process, is just allow yourself to live in kind of a discomfort of like, I'm learning things, but then is this guy entirely right? Because sometimes asking if somebody's right is like the perfect question you can ask. Is what this guy's telling me, is what they're telling me accurate or not? That's the best way to have your investing hat on. That's the best way to prevent yourself from getting taken advantage of and all sorts of things like that.
Amazing. I really love the idea of challenging the status quo and what others are saying. I believe that this is the best way to actually find yourself, like what you're searching for, what you are believing in, and what are the best projects for you to invest in. Because you are saying that Bitcoin is, let's say, the best investment for you, this doesn't mean that for me, this is the best investment, or for anybody else. But you can figure this out only if you challenge what others are saying and not accepting it as pure value. Because actually, it is really the case. There is also something that is missing from the picture, because nobody knows your story, your full story, your experiences and things like that. So nobody can find out why you actually believe that Bitcoin is the best investment. Even if you try to say all the reasoning, there will be something that you can't figure out, because maybe it's part of your subconscious or part of your experience before 20 years ago or things like that. But if we challenge ourselves and our ideas, actually not ours, and ours, but mainly to the gurus and people that are pretending to be influencers or experts, this is how we can come up with our ideas and our decisions. So thank you very much for saying this. I think it's an amazing answer. So we're in the end of our conversation, Brian, and I feel really bad about that. I would love to continue talking with you hours and hours, but tell me and our listeners where they can find more about you and your amazing book.
Well, thanks once again for your platform and for your listeners. I appreciate it. My name again, if you didn't get it before, if you're not looking at the bottom of the screen there on your podcast, it's Brian Dement. My Twitter, I'm very responsive on Twitter. I give away Bitcoin sats all the time on Twitter. So if you want to come follow me on Twitter, I'll probably just DM me. Let me know that you heard about it on the Seasonal Tokens podcast, and I'll send you 10,000 sats. It's a few dollars worth of Bitcoin through the Lightning Network. Pretty fun to use. But anyways, my Twitter handle is at Brian, BRIAN, the THE Mint, MINT. Like I said, I'm always on Twitter every day. And then as far as my book, it's on Amazon. So if you have an Amazon account, go out and grab it. It's on Audible as well. So if you prefer the audio version of the book, it's one of the only books ever to have a Bitcoin wallet hidden inside of the book. So I think right now it's like $600 or $700 worth of Bitcoin. It's hidden in the book. So if you find the 12 hidden words for the seed phrase, you can unlock that Bitcoin wallet. There's somebody that's getting really close to finding it, but I don't think anybody's found all 12 words yet. So there's a little treasure hunt inside of the book if you're interested.
Amazing. Yeah, I forgot to mention that all the links that you want our listeners to have will be included in the show notes. But yeah, thank you very much for spelling out your Twitter. Maybe some of the people will just listen and find you out without checking the links included in the show notes. But again, Thank you very much, Brian, for joining my show. It's an amazing pleasure to have you here and be also a guest on your show during my show. So this was the first time experience for me too. So thank you very much for that.
It was the debut episode.
Yeah. Absolutely. I hope that there will be more like that, but made by you, not only with me. Anyway, so thank you very much again. Thank you very much to all of our listeners that have been listening to us that much. We're, I think, almost 1 hour or maybe a little bit more than that. So thank you very much. I truly appreciate you and your support. And if you find the information here valuable, share it with your friends. Sharing is caring. So let's help people to find out more about crypto investing. I believe that it's not that bad to know about it, but this doesn't mean that you have to be part of it, but you at least should know about it. So thank you very much again to all of our listeners. Subscribe, share, and yeah, I'm Paul, the CMO of Seasonal Tokens, and I'll talk to you on the next episode. Bye.